Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the flight deck. We are currently cruising somewhere over France and we are on a flight to Zurich, Switzerland. Today I'm going to show you a full approach and landing in an Airbus A320neo. I hope you like what you see. Welcome to airspace. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is Microsoft Flight Simulator and I've been using it a bit for my accident investigation reports. But still, today I'm going to be trying to fly a full approach for you in this beautiful A320neo with a British Airways livery that I chose randomly because I like it. To do a normal approach in an Airbus A320, what we do generally about half an hour before landing is the so-called approach briefing. This is the time when the first officer and the captain come together to discuss the upcoming approach and what kind of parameters we expect that day. So first off, let's have a look at the charts. First, we'll take a look at the standard arrival route. Today we're expecting the Bravo Lima Mike 2 Golf route. This is designated right here. There's a lot going on this chart, but basically it just describes this segment from here to here. The airport later is right here. What we can see here is just the routing that we have to fly, and also what altitudes we have to adhere to at each point. The next chart is a little bit more interesting. This is the final approach chart. This really shows how we get to the airport. Most of these lines here describe a procedure that we don't really get to fly, because most of the times when we reach this point right here, called Schiphol, air traffic control will give us so-called radar vectors. These are directions and altitude instructions that take us to the runway. So most of the time we'll be flying somewhere around here, and then we'll follow the ILS, that is the instrument landing system. You can see it depicted here as an arrow, or here from the side. We can see that here we have to cross at 4,000 feet. We have a glide path of 3 degrees, and we can descend really to the runway here. What you also see here in blue is the missed approach procedure. That's a procedure we have to fly in case we cannot land and have to abort our approach. So let's get back into the aircraft. So after we check the charts, we cross-check if our flight plan that we have entered here in our flight management system matches that of the chart. It does almost match the chart, but I cannot change it here in Flight Simulator because it's still quite buggy, but it's good enough for our flight today. What we see right here in this pink magenta color are so-called constraints. These show us that we have to cross certain points at certain altitudes. So this right here says cross this point here below flight level 200, that's 20,000 feet. So that's about 15,000 feet lower than our current altitude, so it's about time to descend. Let's just do that. I'll enter my new altitude right here, and I'll go into open descent for now. For that I pull this little knob right here, and as you can see the engines start going back to idle, and the modes of the autopilot roll back to thrust idle and open descent, and the new altitude is now flight level 200. Flight level 200 is just another way of saying 20,000 feet. As you can see, the engines are rolling back, and the rate of descent that is displayed right here on the primary flight display starts to increase. So right now we have a little bit of a tailwind. We have about 40 miles to go with a descent rate of 2,000 feet per minute. That is about a 3-degree angle that will about bring us there where we want to be. So just to make sure that we hit our target there, I want to descend a little bit faster, so I tell the plane, fly a little bit faster, keep the nose down a bit, and you see the autopilot reacts by putting the nose down. But now let's complete the approach briefing while the autopilot handles our descent. For an approach briefing you saw the charts, what we have to fly, and you saw the airport. Next we'll have a look at the weather in Zurich. That we can order via digital radio, so to speak. By this box right here we can make a weather request and say we want the weather for Zurich, and it has London in here as well. That's where I took off from. So let's just send that, and after a few seconds we should get a message back. So there we go, there's our company message right there. That will be our weather report. So I'll just go into receive messages right here. Go into METAR, that's the aviation weather report. And I'll get these many bits and bytes of data right here. It looks a bit cryptic, but it's actually not that hard to read. It says LSCH, that's the shorthand for Zurich. On the 4th of June at 12:50 Zulu, that's the Universal Coordinated Standard Time. It's on for Switzerland that would be 14:50. So in the afternoon right now when I filmed it. The wind is from 208 degrees with 4 knots, and it's variable between 200 degrees and 340 degrees. We have good visibility over 10 kilometers, and we have few clouds at 1,800 feet. The temperature is 23 degrees, and the QNH, that's the air pressure, that's 1023, so that's 1023 hectopascals. And no SIG means no significant change should be expected, so good weather right there. I'll just enter that here into the flight management system so that the Airbus can compute our approach speed. So the air pressure was 1023, we had 23 degrees Celsius, and the wind was 280 degrees with 4 knots. So that's a little bit of a tailwind from the right for the runway we'll be landing on. And I'll also enter the minimum right here. That is the last altitude where we should have the runway in sight in bad weather conditions. So that's about 200 feet above the ground. But for the nice weather we'll be having today, that will be no problem at all. What I'll also do is, I have already done that. I enter 2 navigation beacons that help me navigate and determine the distance to touchdown. This right here is KLO, that's the airport navigation beacon of Zurich, and that's one that is nearby, just in case. So I have set all that up, and I can see right here that this arrow points already to one of the navigation beacons I set up. I can now see here from the distance that I have about 80 miles, that's 80 miles right here, this ring, and to the next waypoint that we have to cross at 20,000 feet, it's 114 nautical miles to go. And from that distance I can calculate in my mind when I need to start the descent today. We also discuss about how we want to brake the aircraft. It's mostly done by reverse thrust, which we can select right here, but also via the foot pedals. These are these. And if you don't want to do that, we can even select an auto brake where the Airbus will brake by itself. So for our approach today, I'll be braking manually because the runway we'll be landing on is over 3 kilometers long, and I know it well, so I know how to brake, when to brake, and in a safe and coordinated manner so that we can exit the runway pretty efficiently. So, by the way, we haven't looked at our nice aircraft today. Today we're flying this beautiful British Airways A320neo. I like the livery a lot by British Airways. I think it's very clean and stylish looking. Alright, let's head back to the flight deck. Let's see how our descent is progressing right here. I can see that we still have 86 miles to go to Bravo Lima Mike, so that's still quite far off. I think I cut forward a little bit because this descent part right here is a little bit boring. Not much is happening here, and in that meantime what we'd be doing in the real aircraft is just answering air traffic control calls and handling descent step downs. So I fast forwarded a bit to cut out the boring part. We're coming up here on our initial approach fix, that's Bravo Lima Mike, and we're descending at a good rate to 12,000 feet, that's flight level 120. What we do at this point is we start getting more quiet and we stop the chit chat between each other. We really focus on the approach. We'll be about 10-12 minutes to landing from here on. So we switch on the landing system button to receive the landing system signal as soon as possible. As you can see now we have a display here with two dots to either side and a yellow bar here as well, and that will show us our approach indicator. That's the instrument landing system. It will show us if we are centered on the runway laterally and vertically right here. You'll see later on. What I'll also do is I'll turn on the fasten seatbelt sign and turn on the landing lights so other air traffic can see us better. So from here on I steadily calculate how far we have to go. So we're just coming up to 12,000 feet right now. I've cut out the boring part and we are approaching Braulio Mike. This is our initial approach fix. Braulio Mike is the airport navigation beacon of Basel that's on the Swiss and French border. Let me just show you right there. The airport is down here. You can see the main runway 3315, it's right here. So from here we are leveling off at flight level 120. The autopilot went into alt star mode, that's altitude capture mode. And as soon as we approach 12,000 feet, it will go into altitude hold mode. So right about now we will be transitioning into Swiss airspace, and you'd be ready to hear the funny accents of all the pilots and all the air traffic controllers. So we are passing Braulio Mike and the autopilot automatically turns to the next point, which is Zulu Hotel 677. And let's do our next altitude calculation. To our final approach fix, which is right here, I see it's about 33 miles. So 33 miles at a 3-degree angle descent slope, that would be 11,000 feet, plus we have to reduce our speed as well. So just about now we would have to reduce our speed by air traffic control most of the time. So we'll do that right now. The autopilot went into altitude hold mode as it really captured the altitude by plus minus 10 feet or so. So let's start reducing our speed right here on the flight control unit. And as you can see, the Airbus reduces the speed nicely. We have about 30 miles to go, 30 miles is 10,000 feet. If I want to have some altitude to spare, I'll start descending now. Usually that's when air traffic control will give us clearance anyway. And most of the time they take us away from the normal approach sequence that we have here in green and put us on a heading of about 085 most of the time. So I'll just set that and pull. And it doesn't behave like in the real aircraft, unfortunately. But I adjusted it, so the navigation mode went into heading, and the heading is 085, and you can see that here in this little blue triangle as well, and here, so we're heading straight to the runway. Maybe a little too straight. I'll just adjust that to the left. The air traffic controller would normally do that and tell us the altitudes. So now we descend to 7,000 feet. This is, most of the time, this is the next step. So I set 7,000 feet, pull this little knob, and the modes go into thrust idle and open descent, and the altitude is here in 7,000 feet. What we also do, because we now no longer fly in flight levels but in altitude, we switch over from standard pressure to the local air pressure, so we can really fly our assigned altitude very exactly. That was 1023 if you remember. So I set that, I see that here. Normally I'd set that here too, but this is a little buggy, so I'll just leave it like it is. And we descend for our approach. I see now the next waypoint is Osnem. This is our final approach fix. And it's 24 miles. And if you divide that by 3, you see that you have 8,000 feet to go on a 3-degree glide slope. So 11 minus 8, that's 3,000. And from the chart, we know that we should intercept Osnem at 4,000. So at the moment, with the good descent rate, we're coming in just about at the correct angle. Maybe we'll have to increase our rate of descent a little bit because, as we can see up here, we have a little tailwind. Now I think I'm a little bit too high, so I'll increase my rate of descent. I'll do that by pulling the speed brakes lever. That one's right here. So let me just get about half speed brakes out. And what that does is it deflects these surfaces on the wings. Oops, sorry. Right here, as you can see, these flaps over here. And what they do, they produce drag and destroy lift, so they help the aircraft descend faster. It's beautiful, isn't it? So as you can see, the descent rate increased to over 2,000 feet per minute, which is nice. And by now the ILS is also receiving, which is India Kilo Lima for Zurich, the frequency right here, and we can see we have 24 miles to touchdown, so we should be at 9,400 feet now. We're a little bit below the glide slope, but we also need to reduce our speed quite a bit, so we are right where we should be. Usually that's when the call comes to descend to 5,000 feet, so that's what we are going to do right now. So we see 5,000 is blue right here, so all good. 15 miles to Osnem, that's 5,000 feet to go. So I guess we are now nicely on a good glide slope. So I'll just take the speed brakes in again, and the descent rate should now shallow out a little bit. Let's see if we can see the runway already. We cannot. It should be about over there. So this is really the interesting part. This is the part of the flight where we really need to micromanage stuff, speed and altitude, and sometimes air traffic control helps. Sometimes you get to do it all alone. But it's really a lot of fun. What we do now, since we are coming up to the airport, is we would reduce our speed normally, but us pilots, we'd like to fly as fast as possible, as long as we can, because we get there faster and our passenger get there faster. So I'll leave the speed for now, since air traffic control didn't tell me to slow down. What we can also do is turn right a little bit to heading 110. That's going to be our so-called final intercept heading. On this heading, we'll slide into our ILS approach right here. Maybe that was a little premature. Let's see. Yep, that was a little premature. No, it should actually work. We should hit that point, otherwise it won't work. Let's just open up that turn by 5 degrees. Let's do 105. There we go. So yeah, we'll come up on that point pretty much exactly. That's a little too tight. Let's open it up a little bit more. Let's go to heading 100 so we can slide in over here. So you can now see the localizer and the glide slope. These are the parts of the ILS that tell us if we are on the glide slope and on the track to the runway, which we are not at the moment, but we will be in a minute. So the mode goes into speed alt star because we are at 5,000 feet. And this is the point where we start to reduce our speed. So the engines stay at idle, we stay at altitude. We take out some energy. Because in the end, remember, our approach speed was about 140 knots, I believe. Let's see, it's 129. A little bit different, but no matter. So we need to get down to 129 knots from 250, all with just air drag. So as you can see, the speed is reducing here. We're coming up on the ILS, and I'll arm it right here by pressing approach. Alright guys, sorry, I had to reset Flight Simulator because it doesn't always do what the real aircraft does. So we're back at 5,000 feet, coming into the ILS. You can see the deviation here to the left and slightly below the glide slope. So we'll descend now to 4,000 feet. Normally this would be given by air traffic control, but I'll do it myself. So it goes into thrust idle, open descent, and altitude to 4,000 feet. And we are on a good heading to intercept, and we'll try it again if it works this time. We'll turn right to 105 degrees, start reducing our speed, and since we are below these orange lines right here, we can deploy the first stage of the flaps, which we can see right here, flaps 1. And we continue reducing our speed. We also arm the approach and hope for the best this time. Ah yes, so this time it goes into localizer capture, so it captures this part. The glide slope is armed, it will capture it as soon as it comes up here. And it says Cat 3 single here. This is just one kind of approach we can do. Like, this is an approach capability, like how exact the navigation is.
2,500.
Cat 3 single is quite precise. So we'll reduce the speed further.
2,500.
Deploy the second stage of flaps, so we can do a stable descent. And you can see the maximum speed bar comes down here. Flaps 2 deploy, and we should capture the glide slope any second now. Let's just help it a little bit.
2,500.
Put it into vertical speed for just a second. And the radial altimeter has announced 2,500, so it has sensed ground below and tells us that we are close to landing. The runway is nicely in sight. We'll be landing right there in a few moments. And we have speed glide slope capture. Now it goes into alt star for some reason. Give me a second. There we go. Speed, glide slope, localizer, and Cat 3 single. Usually we go Cat 3 dual, but we can't do that in Flight Simulator. It's close enough.
2,500.
It goes 2,500 again since it senses the ground, and I'll put it into managed speed, so it should go to our approach speed of 129 as we determined. We have a light tailwind and 6 miles to go. We are at 180 knots, a little bit fast, so I'll put the landing gear down. Put the wheels down, they unlock, and you should see 3 triangles right here, indicating that all is well downlocked, hopefully. And we'll start deploying the last stages of flaps, so I'll go flaps 3 right here. Speed tapes comes down a little bit. And I'll go flaps full as well, so we have the full stages of flaps. We'll arm the speed brakes, they'll help us brake on landing. And switch on the lights if we haven't done it already. Oops, not off. I want to go on. There you go. So far, as you can see, the autopilot is on and manages everything perfectly. And it says 1000. We do the last checks here, the landing checklist and so on. The landing checklist is displayed here. All is green except the cabin. The cabin would report to us and say that everybody's seated, everybody's strapped in. And all we have to do is land this thing. This is the fun part. So I'll just get situated like I'm sitting in the real aircraft, about like that. And I like to switch the autopilot off a little bit earlier. You can leave it on until like 80 feet above the ground, which is not very reasonable, so I'll just switch it off. You'll hear the triple click, and we verify that we have 4,000 feet in the missed approach window in the middle here in the FCUs. In case anything goes wrong, we'll climb back to 4,000 feet. What you can see right now is that the flight director here on the primary flight display is not very nicely simulated, but I'm on the glide slope on the localizer and the runway is straight ahead, so let's see if I can do this today. It's a little bit different with just a joystick at the computer than in the real aircraft. You feel so much more in the real aircraft with air currents and flying with the seat of your pants, so to speak. So you'll hear the radial altimeter counting down when we come down like 50, 40, 30. When we come to 30, I'll pull up slightly and then we should touch down hopefully reasonably today. I'm slightly below the glide slope, I'm correcting very, very slowly. Goes into land mode, that will be, we checked that, the captain and I, we go land checked.
300.
Oh, that's laggy right here. I'm a little bit high, correcting that.
200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
That's a little bit too
100
early.
above.
I'll let it down.
5.
There we go, we have touchdown. Spoilers come up, I apply reverse. No brakes needed right here because the exit is where the green lights are in front of us. I'll even on-reverse a bit, otherwise we'll be on the runway for a little bit too long. So I can see us slowing down right here. I want to exit at about 50 knots, so I'll start braking a little bit. And there we go. I'll on-reverse, let off the brakes, and slowly steer off the runway, which you, by the way, do with a little wheel that I can show you in a second. There we go. And that was the approach and landing. What we would do now is contact ground and get assigned a stand number, taxi to stand, get all the passengers out, get refueled, get new passengers in, and do it all again. I'll just stop right here, apply the parking brake, and I'll show you that wheel that we steer the aircraft with, which is right over here. We can turn it like a little steering wheel. So, let me know if you liked that flight, and if we should do that again sometimes. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe, and I see you in the next one.